top, F top Jaguar. We look for heaven, but
damn it. Alright guys, made it to the bike. Wish me luck.
Walking closer to sun shoes, cold champagne in the afternoon. We look for heaven, but it's not this. We look for heaven, but it's not this.
Alright guys, this is David right here. We played a hand together. He's a viewer. I had ace jack of diamonds in the cutoff. He was in the hijack to my direct right. He opened to 15. I made it 50.
I called.
He called. We both don't know the exact flop, but it was king like 8-6.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
2 hearts, 1 diamond. I c-bet 65. He calls. Turn is like the 4 of it's another low card. It brings a backdoor flush draw, the diamond draw. So I now have the nut flush as well. He checks to me again. I had about 360 left behind, something like that. I'll just have it in the graphics. The pot's like 235. There's like kind of an awkward stack size situation because I can't just bet.
I thought you were gonna bet. If you bet, yeah. I was gonna reshove.
I was thinking of over betting, shoving. I could have ace king, I could have aces, I could have kings. The point is he can't really have those hands. And I could put a weak king to the test, like king 10, king jack, I don't know. Fold out all his draws. I didn't want to bet half pot or something and leave myself with like 200 into like a $400 pot, something like that. So couldn't pull the trigger and I checked back, which I really don't like in hindsight because I'm always betting a king when there's 2 flush draws on the board with like straight draws. So I'm always betting a king or better basically. Really showed weakness by checking there and he can now very comfortably bet. The river is the the 10 of hearts or something like that, completing the front door flush. He bets 125. I fold pretty quickly. He says he was gonna reshove on me if I bet turn.
Because on the turn I had a
gutter and
a flush draw. Yeah, and I hit it on the river.
I don't know what he had. We'll never know for sure, but it was really nice meeting you, man. We got tangled in a lot of hands. Actually.
Well, at least we didn't
like
stack
small
each
hands.
other.
Yeah,
we had the biggest stacks.
We were the biggest stacks. We both had, like, he had 800 or something before me, and I had like 600 at that point. We both had big stacks, over 200 bigs, and I was hoping he wouldn't stack me, and he was hoping I would.
I tried.
Yeah,
you were really tight though.
I was. I'm a nit, guys. Everyone knows it.
That's why I call. I had 4-6 suited.
That's what you say you had?
Yeah, I did have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last big hand, or pretty much the last hand I played, I had 10-8 of clubs under the gun straddle. So I raised to 22. The straddler calls. Flop comes 10-9-3 after he checks. I c-bet $25. He raises to 75. I had been 3-betting him a little bit, I'd say, during the session, and like c-betting pots, taking it down. So I felt like he could be making a move.
I don't think there's one hand where you didn't fucking 3-bet me.
Really?
Or anybody at the fucking time. I was like, what the fuck?
I 3-bet quite a bit. I felt like he might have been making a move, but the thing was he left himself maybe 95 behind. So I'm kind of somewhat committing myself if I call on the flop as long as the turn's safe. I felt like I was kind of committing myself if I call. So I decided to call. Turn brought the 6 of spades, so it was a pretty safe card. He shoves, I snap call. River's an ace of clubs, and he shows king 7 of diamonds, right? Yeah, for the flush draw. So we ended up scooping that, and that was the last big pot we played. Really nice meeting you and playing with you, bro. Oh, there we go.
It's not this. I've been dreaming.
Are you leaving, sir? You gonna rack those up for you? Yeah, sure.
Look for heaven, but it's not this.
Walk of shame, guys. That was some crazy freaking shit. I'll talk about it when I get home because I have to be home in an hour and it takes about that long to get home. But I had my biggest losing session today, and yeah, probably couldn't have gone any worse. All right, guys, it's tomorrow. I'm back home now just for a little bit, and then I'll be back in LA tonight, and then I'm gonna start playing again tomorrow. But for now, I just want to go over the hands from yesterday. There were a ton of them, so I'm just going to try to run through them really quickly. Ran like absolute garbage, and there were just spots where we couldn't really do anything about it. First hand, there's a $6 straddle. There are 2 calls, and I raise pocket 10s on the button to $35 and get 4 callers. So we go to a flop, which comes 7-6-3 rainbow. So when it checks to me, I bet $90. Only the cutoff calls to my direct right. Turn is an offsuit ace. When the cutoff checks it over to me, I didn't think I was getting much value from worse betting here. So I check back, and we're off to a river card, which comes a deuce. This time my opponent bets $75 into 360 and ended up making the call, and he shows 5-4 of diamonds for the flop straight. There was another hand where I had kings. It was a straddled pot again, a few calls, maybe 2 or 3, and then I raised probably to 35 or something. One of the limp re-raises to maybe like 150 or so. I snap call. It's against a viewer too. Kings. Board runs out safe and he has aces. This is David again from 2 days ago. I had 6s in the big blind. Under the gun raises to 13. The small blind and I call, and then the flop comes 9-6-8 to rainbow. 9-6-8 rainbow. So we flop a set. The small blind and I check, and the under the gun player bets 20. I decide to just flat call here after the small blind folds. I want to keep his bluffs in if he has 2 overcards, and of course if he has an overpair or something like 10-9, 2 pair, something like that, then I definitely want to keep those hands in. Turn is the 3 of clubs. I check again, and the under the gun player bets 35. Now it's time to go for some value, so I make it 110. My opponent doesn't think too long before shoving for what ends up being 246 effective. I snap call, of course. The river is the 10 of hearts, and then he turns over a 7 of clubs for the straight.
Flush draw straight.
Sorry.
It's fine, it's fine.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out.
So he had every draw in the world on the turn and ended up getting there. Next hand I had 10s again under the gun. I made it 15 and got 2 calls. Flop comes pretty safe again, 9-7-4-2 hearts. I bet 35 and only the under the gun plus 2 player calls. Turn is a 4, I bet 65, he calls again. River's the queen of diamonds, and I decide to check. If he has a misdraw, then I want to give him a chance to bluff, and I don't think we're getting value from a 9 after triple barreling. My opponent bets $100. This player had been caught bluffing several times, so thought about it for a bit, and then ended up making the call. And then he shows pocket kings. All right, this last hand, I opened king jack of spades to $15 under the gun. The button at the small blind call, so 3 ways to a flop, which comes king 4 ace to clubs. Small blind checks, and I think I'm gonna go either way. Not sure, maybe a check's better, but I just think this board's gonna favor my range, and betting here is gonna give me a chance to represent more later streets. I bet 35 and only the small blind calls. Turn is the 3 of spades. He checks to me again, and I decide to double barrel here. I bet 55, and part of the reason is to continue charging flush draws, maybe get like a king to fold. But also because I am in position, so if I do bet here, I think it makes it a little more likely he's going to check to me on the river, and then I can go ahead and check back. Anyways, he ends up calling the 55, so headed to a river, which is the ace of spades. And this time my opponent bets $100. Looks like a value bet, but also this player just seemed out to get me for some reason. And then also he could have plenty of flush draws in his range, and he was definitely there just for fun. There was a hand where he ended up showing down like Queen 3 offsuit. In another hand, he had played against my friend Ton. He had ace king of spades, and then he checked in the dark to Ton all 3 streets, and he actually turned the nut flush. So when he bets here, I don't know, looks like it could be a bluff as well given the way he played before. So I ended up making the call after thinking for a while, and he had ace deuce of diamonds. So he just lost every single important hand and rebought over and over again. I was in for a total of 1.5k, and I cashed out for $275 for a $1,225 loss, which is the biggest loss I've had to date. So anyways, gonna be playing tomorrow, so hopefully things go better. This next hand is from October 7th. I look down at pocket 4s and under the gun +1. The under the gun player limps, and as I mentioned before, I think it's fine to play small pocket pairs in early position at low stakes because players just aren't going to 3-bet you that much to exploit you. And also I think I'm just going to have an edge post-flop in general that'll make it a little more profitable. So I decided to raise to 15 and only the cutoff calls. So heads up to a flop which comes queen 8-6 rainbow. On a pretty dry queen high board, I think it's going to favor my range a little bit more. So I decide to c-bet here and I make it kind of small. I bet $15 hoping to just take it down cheaply, and my opponent actually snap raises me to 30, and I just didn't believe her here because just in general, when I c-bet and get snap raised, usually the person's just messing around and trying to look strong. And I'm pretty sure just based on the player that she would think for a while if she had a value hand and then probably raise bigger. So I just didn't believe her here, and I actually decided to 3-bet with pocket 4s, which seems a little crazy, and maybe it is, but didn't want to fold here because I just didn't believe my opponent, and I don't want to call and then have to call down and not know where I'm at. I 3-bet to 65, which is pretty small, but this is purely an exploitative play, and I don't really see myself doing this often if at all. So I just made it 65 to try to take it down, and surprisingly, she actually snap calls. So I have no idea what she could possibly have because I still don't believe she really has that strong of a hand. So when the turn brings the king of clubs, putting a second club on the board, I decided to just go for it here, and I put her all in for about $80, which I think is like half pot, but I just don't think she's going to be super strong here, and the king is going to be better for my range than hers. So I decided to put her all in, and she makes this frustrated gesture, but she actually ends up calling. So I have no idea what she has at this point, and probably in pretty bad shape now. The river brings the 5 of spades, and I tell my opponent her hand's good, and she turns over jack 8 of clubs. So she was messing around on the flop, and she got a turn card that gave her another reason to continue. So yeah, kind of sucks, and the hyper aggressive play with pocket fours does not work out. This next hand I think is a pretty interesting one. It's from the session I played the next day on October 8th. I looked down at pocket 8s in, I believe, the small blind or the big blind. The under the gun player, who was a young guy, seemed to be playing fairly standard, and just sat down a while ago. He opens to $20. This is bigger than his normal raise size, which I think was like 12-ish or 10. And yeah, seems like a pretty strong hand. In general, I've just noticed that like 2-3, a lot of like more nitty players will never raise, and then all of a sudden they'll raise to 20 and they'll have aces, kings, whatever. So the under the gun +1 player calls, and I decide to just flat in the small blind. So 3 ways to a flop, which comes 9, 8, 7 with 2 hearts. So we flop middle set. The original raiser c-bets 35, I believe, and the under the gun +1 player folds. So action's now on me, and I decide to raise it to 85, I think. I made a really stupid mistake here that I shouldn't be making, but I thought he had 150-ish behind. I just did not see another stack behind, so he actually had me covered, and I had like 200 something left. So I was trying to induce a shove from him if he did have a strong hand, and had to decide right now whether he wanted to commit, but he pretty quickly calls, and that's when I see that he actually had enough behind to cover me. So we're going heads up to a turn, which brings the 4 of spades, putting a second flush draw on the board. Action's now on me, and I actually decide to check, which I think isn't the most obvious option. I think I have about a pot size bet left behind, and the first thing that would come to mind would be to shove here. But basically the reason for checking here was because I put my opponent pretty much squarely on an overpair, given that he raised very big pre-flop from early position, and then c-bet on a really wet board that should not favor his range, and then also snap called my raise on the flop. If he had a really strong hand here, like jack 10, a set himself, 9, 7, something like that, then I think he would at least think for a while and consider raising. So I'm pretty much just putting him on overpairs and possibly like ace king of hearts, but even then I think he might even raise with that. So basically I was just trying to target his range, and I think that just based on the way he had been playing, he might be capable of folding if I shove the turn, just knowing that this board should favor my range more than his, and I didn't want to shove and scare him off of a worse hand. I think a good option would be to down bet here and make it like 65 or 75, something like that, because then he'll feel a little obligated to call if he does have an overpair, and I might be able to get a little bit more value from something that might have otherwise folded if I shove. But I decided on a check because I think he's going to expect me to be playing straightforward. He probably doesn't know me, and he'll just expect that I'd be betting jack 10 here, sets here, 2 pair, like 9-8 here. So I think by checking, it makes me look really weak, and if he does have an overpair and he thinks I'm on a draw, then he might bet to protect his hand, in which case I could check call or check raise. And if he doesn't bet, then I can still bet the river and try to represent bluffs. And even though a lot of cards are going to be kind of scary looking, only really scare cards would be a heart, because that it looks like that's what I have, and possibly like a 10 if I had like, I don't know, something jack of hearts. So, but I think even like straightening cards like a 6 or something aren't going to be too scary, because that shouldn't really complete many draws I should have, except maybe like 10s or something like that. I just decided on a check and tried to play a little tricky here, and he pretty quickly checks back. The river brings a perfect card. It's a 3 of clubs, I believe, or a deuce of clubs, something like that. So everything misses, and sorry guys, the battery ran out. River brings a blank, and this is the perfect run out to represent a bluff. So I think for a while and then decide to shove. My opponent goes into the tank, and he actually says out loud that he doesn't think I have a straight, so that's good news. And then after about a minute of tanking, he eventually makes the call. I show my hand, and he shows pocket king. So it worked out perfectly for us, and yeah, won a really nice pot here. This next hand was from that same session. I open queen 10 of clubs in under the gun +1, and I get 2 calls. Flop comes 9 jack queen with 2 spades. So we flop top pair with an open ender. The big blind checks and I put out a C bet of $30. The hijack calls and the big blind check raises to $96. This player was playing pretty well and I think he's definitely capable of bluffing here. And I have top pair with an open ender, so not going anywhere, and I decide to make the call. The turn is the ace of spades, which is probably the worst card in the deck. It completes the flush draw, and now king 10 gets there, things like that. So the big blind continues betting and makes it 100. He has about 300 left behind, and I just don't think it's worth continuing with the hand, so I decide on a fold. Today's October 11th. Just had a pretty bad losing session. It was minus 271, so down about a buy-in. I was up maybe like 100 at some point, and then I pick up pocket jacks on the button. There's an under the gun straddle to $6 and then 2 callers. I 3-bet to $35 and I get 2 calls early in middle position. The flop comes 6-4-4, 2 hearts. Both opponents check to me and I bet $45 and the early position player calls. Turn is a 6, probably not a great card to keep barreling on, so when my opponent checks to me, I check back. River is the 9 of spades. My opponent checks to me again, and this time I decide to go for a bet of 130. My opponent ends up shoving for 264 effective, and I tanked for a really long time, even though to you guys and to me in hindsight it's a very clear fold. I think recreational 2-3 players aren't going to be bluff raising rivers that much unless it's a very specific type of player, and this player was fairly tight, and I guess part of the reason I ended up calling, I had beaten him in a hand earlier where I flopped a set of 9s and he ended up turning 2 pair with king 9 and I stacked him, so I guess I let that convince me that he might be making a move here, but I just can't think of many hands he's going to be turning into a bluff here after calling the flop. I think it's just a pretty clear fold in hindsight, but I ended up making the call in the moment and he turns over 7-6 offsuit, so we lose a really big pot. That was the session defining hand and definitely could have played it better though, so yeah, my fault. Last hand for this vlog and last hand period for this vlog in general. I pick up pocket kings on the low jack and I raise to $15 and both the button and the big blind call. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, which comes 5-3-9 rainbow. Pretty safe flop. So when the big blind checks, I put out a small C bet of $20. The button calls and the big blind check raises to 60. Don't see too many bluffs he could be doing this with. The most realistic would be something like 7-6. I think it's a little too weak to fold right now, and sometimes players just go crazy. So I made the call and the button calls as well, so we're going 3 ways to a turn card, which is the 8 of clubs. Pretty bad card because now the most realistic draw gets there and the big blind ends up continuing and makes it 85 this time. So now action's on me, and having the big blind in the hand just makes things kind of awkward, and I just don't think it's going to be profitable to call here. So I ended up making the fold and the button ends up calling. So my opponents are still heads up to a river. I really wanted to see what happened, so I ended up taking notes on this hand, and the river was the 4 of spades. This time the big blind actually slows down and checks, and the button ends up betting $120. And after a while of thinking, the big blind calls. The button ended up having 7-6 for the straight, and the big blind had 9-8 offsuit for top pair on the flop, and then he ended up turning 2 pair. So unfortunately we were ahead on the flop and ended up losing this one, but luckily we ended up folding the turn and they got there on the turn. So yeah.
Dominoes, they fall inside my head. I don't see them now, maybe later. You just have to visualize.
Alright guys, before I officially end the vlog for good, I did say that I was going to give a more detailed explanation of why I'm ending the vlog, and it's really not that complicated. It's just a little bit too much of a time commitment right now. When I first started the vlog, it was like my main focus, and it was the main project that I was working on, and what I was devoting most of my time to, besides school, of course. But now that I'm done with school and I'm trying to transition to other things, this vlog kind of takes a lot of time to maintain, and I know a lot of you guys were asking as well, why don't I just hire an editor or just include the hand histories and make it a less quality vlog but still be able to maintain it, or why don't I just post less often, which would kind of be crazy because I'm already posting only like once or twice a month on average. And I've thought about those things, but it's more than just like the physical work of having to edit and then film and then, you know, set up the camera at the table. Aside from that, there's also having to always keep it in the back of your mind, like when was the last time I posted a video, and when do I need to post another one so that I can make it as consistent as possible, and I just don't want to have that constantly on the back of my mind as far as making the vlogs lower quality or just including the hands, or doing anything that I can to make it less difficult and less time consuming to edit. If I'm gonna have a poker vlog or any type of YouTube channel, I do want to make the best quality videos I possibly can, and it wouldn't really be as rewarding or fulfilling to make videos just for the sake of keeping this alive. So I don't want to go halfway on it, and I think it's just best to end the vlog completely or keep it completely. And yeah, I'm choosing to end it, guys. But all of that being said, don't think that I haven't enjoyed this entire poker vlog journey. When I first started this vlog, I had a pretty good idea that it would start to grow and become successful, but to actually experience the growth from the very beginning, starting from 0 subscribers, 0 views, and then growing from there, and then seeing everyone's responses, which were overwhelmingly supportive from the beginning all the way to now. Even if I were to describe it to you, or even if someone else was to describe it to me before I started, experiencing it is a completely different thing. And actually getting feedback from you guys on my game and advice on hands I played, it's actually made me a better player, and it's been worth all the work that I put into making these vlogs. So thank you guys, and whatever you think I contributed to your YouTube experience or to the poker community or poker vlog community in general, just know that you guys collectively have contributed many times more to me personally. So, you know, it's crazy to get all these comments and messages from people, most of whom I'll never ever get to meet. And it's awesome to actually get to meet you guys when I'm at the casino, or when I'm in Vegas, or even when I'm in New York. I met someone there, and at the airport I met someone who worked for TSA who watched my videos, and that was so freaking cool. So if you've ever left a comment, or even just watched the videos, or liked, or DM'd me, or whatever, or said hi to me in person, thank you guys for that, and I really appreciate it. Even if you hate these videos, thanks for the ad revenue. I think that's it, guys. The vlog has officially come to an end, and as always, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this vlog, and I will see you in the next... Oh, wait.
Things are shaping up to be pretty odd. Little destined musical beds. So it seems of someone I never met. When everybody gets there, everybody gets there, and everybody gets their way. I never said I missed her when everybody kissed her. No, I'm the only one to blame. Things have changed for me, and that's okay. I'm on my way, and I say, well, things have changed for me. Come on, everybody, let me dance, okay. Well, I'm singing it all out. Come on, everybody, just sing along. Things have changed for me, and that's okay. I'm on my way, and I'll say, have changed.